Okay, so today we're going to be exploring the life and works of Virko Bali. He's a distinguished Ukrainian American composer whose journey from war-torn Europe to Grammy-winning success, it resonates with audiences around the globe. His compositions blend Eastern European musical traditions with modern classical forms, creating a sound that is both deeply personal and widely influential. He's also one of my earliest music composition instructors, so I'm very glad to have you with me here today to kind of talk about your process and your journey in becoming a composer. I think one of the first things maybe we should start with is what inspired you to become a composer and what has your journey been like?
Insanity.
Insanity, yes.
Insanity inspired me. Well, that's an interesting question, and that gets into the subject that I'm kind of interested in: is where do we come from? Uh, what makes us who we are? Of course, people always say, environment. I know there's no question about it, but if you take the same environment and two different people, even twins, they come out different. Why? And I'm talking about so-called identical twins.
Yeah.
And I think there is something about that is, I think, a mystery to some extent. But to another extent, I don't think it is, because it has to do with the DNA that we inherit, not just from our parents, but from their parents going backwards. And so my thinking is that I'm not really responsible for this.
Okay.
I mean, I am, but ultimately, because at some point you, as an adult or growing to be an adult, you make that decision. There are other options open to you as well. And but I don't think I was. But it started in a very simple way that my mother, bless her soul, or damn her soul, I'm not sure which one I should go,
Uh-oh.
noticed that anytime there was music playing, and I was in the crib still, so I was, shall we say, not really understanding anything yet. And the music was going, I would wave my arms in time.
Oh, wow.
And so she decided, as mothers generally tend to do that, decided that I should be involved with music somehow. And but 1938, the year I was born, 39, the real war began. And so there were many things that got in the way of my mother's ambitions for me. And my mother was very ambitious for me. So that that was just a fact. And so, to make a very long story short, we ended up in Germany, and the in between will be another time. We ended up in Germany, and we ended up, as we wanted to, in the American zone, and started living in München. Ultimately, my father got a job working at a new, which you would call, immigrants newspaper, Ukrainian newspaper. There were loads of Ukrainians in Germany at that time. Some of them who just came, but majority who were brought there, particularly when work became important and the amount of people that were being killed, both in Germany and on the front, made workers shortage. So they had to bring them in. And of course, the best place for them to bring them in is where they were controlling them, where they were the lords of the rain to some extent. So anyway, we ended up there in München, and the place we stayed had a piano. Now, that's not all that surprising because for the most part, anything from middle class on up in Germany had a piano.
Okay.
Yeah, Germans were very, very close to their music. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
even to this day, that's a different audience than almost any place else.
Mhm.
So, um, so I started having piano lessons, and we had a teacher also from Ukraine, from the area where we lived originally, uh, in Western Ukraine, and he would travel from city to city and give piano lessons um, because Ukrainians were sort of all over the place. And he did that until he got enough in one place where he didn't have to do that anymore.
Right.
Um, and it's funny because that's after I came back from the army. I had to do kind of the same thing. I had to start teaching privately, and I opened it for the home. But for the first year, I traveled all over LA and did private lessons that way. And so his name was, what was his name? Trying to remember now. It'll come to me later.
Mhm.
And he he would come once a week and give me a lesson. My mother would sit by there and take notes. She was a bit of a bitch that one. And oh, let me turn this on. This will happen. This is life,
Yeah.
people.
Oh yeah, this happens.
I'm having a Zoom discussion with Kevin right now. Okay, darling, it's still here. Okay, bye. So after 7 months, he no longer was doing that. He had already supplied himself enough in the area where he was living. And so he told mother, listen, you got to continue with him because I can tell you he's different. And in the 7 months that he started with me, it was like with 14 months with everybody else,
That's a huge compliment.
you know. So, but that stuck in my mother's brain.
Mhm.
And so and that gave me a lot of trouble. And
Yeah.
so, and at that point in time, a little bit later, the displaced persons camps, which were set up originally to repatriate everybody. Now, after the Berlin crisis, uh, which the Americans managed to win, because the Soviets wanted to take all of Berlin, overtake it. And America said, no, 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 no. And
Right.
so they helped keep what we call as West Berlin alive. And at that point, the DP camps no longer were repatriation camps, but became holding sort of camps for people to figure out and make applications where they wanted to live. And I think my father sort of in Germany and maybe France, maybe Scandinavia, something like that. But my mother's sister was already in the U.S. with her family
Mhm.
because her husband's brother, who was a priest, we would call a Catholic Orthodox priest,
Okay.
Union. I'm sorry for that noise. Um, what happened was that in the 16th into the 17th century, Ukraine was part of Poland, Western Ukraine, and they were Catholics, of course. And the
Mhm.
Jesuits came there to make sure that they stayed Catholics, because a lot of them wanted to become Protestants. And then the Catholic Church in that part made an application, so to speak, request to the Pope could they remain from the point of view of ritual the same as Orthodox, which meant that the service was not in Latin, but would be Church Slavonic or Ukrainian version of Church Slavonic, and the priests would have to be allowed to be married. And the reason was that no good peasant would trust a priest that wasn't married.
Okay.
So, and they gave the permission. So anyway, we started looking for a place. And we did find it. And my mother's sister, they became our guarantees, because they had to guarantee livelihood for you for a year.
Yeah.
So we started working on that. And then in late spring, early summer, 1989, I think, we got permission to come to the United States. And we went on a boat and arrived the usual place. And so that was the way we came to the United States. And then we stayed with that priest for 2 weeks. And then we went on a Greyhound bus.
Oh, wow. Of all things.
A Greyhound bus
Yeah.
from the New Jersey to middle of Los Angeles.
Oh, wow. That must have taken a while.
3 days and 3 nights.
Yeah, wow.
And it got to the point that buses were being introduced in Los Angeles at that time, and for the majority were still streetcars. I couldn't ride on a bus. I would get sick.
Oh, no.
It took me about a year to get over that.
Oh, yeah.
Take a sip of it. By the way, this isn't cold. It's really wine, but
Yeah.
so
You're not supposed to tell people that. You're supposed to disguise it.
okay. Maybe I'm lying. How do you know?
Yeah. You
So
never
anyway,
know. Can't trust Ukrainians.
I started then. My mother, of course, still had this ambition.
Yeah.
So she found teachers that would train me, but we had no piano to practice. So we would find a neighbor that had a piano, and they would allow me to come there for half an hour and bang away. But it was useless. I mean, I really made absolutely no progress whatsoever. I got a little better at reading and all of that. So
you mean you have to practice for more than 30 minutes a day to get better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
So, then we moved to our own place. Father got a job working in what we would call what is the term for that? Where people would make dresses and pants and all of that.
Tailor, seamstress.
What's for them? I didn't know they were coming today. I know those things.
Yeah.
Trisha always beats me up about that. So anyway, still no piano until father got actually a well-paying job. He worked his ass off in a foundry. They were making airplane parts, and he was a very smart guy. Question about it. A lawyer by profession, a writer by avocation. And once he got there, started working seriously and started getting more paid because the owner discovered the guy was good. He also discovered a new way to make a part, which was for an airplane.
Okay.
And they started making money on it, blah, blah, blah. So they made him a foreman. And so he started making more money, and he says, okay, I can leave that bloody something wet shop, I don't know. And just
sweatshop?
What? I'm sorry?
Sweatshop?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what they call it.
They for about almost a year, he went in the morning to make some dresses or pants. And then in the evening, he would go to the foundry and work until 2 o'clock, at which point the buses stopped riding. So he had to walk back home, sleep for about 3 or 4 hours, and then go to work again. So,
Wow.
of course, in those days, Saturday, you worked for half a day. Saturday was not off totally, but it was a half a day. He would come back and he would mainly sleep from Saturday until Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's all he did. On Sunday, then we could do things, often go to the beach and things like that. So then we moved to South San Gabriel. For people not aware of the greater Los Angeles, this is going to be like, what the hell is South San Gabriel? But it was actually a nice neighborhood, and we got a place with almost an acre of a garden. And a nice, 3 bedrooms and all of that. And my parents decided to put a down payment and buy the thing. Well, prices were not ludicrously expensive as they are now. So we were able to do that. And then he went to a auction. And there was a piano there with auction. So I didn't know anything about that. And I didn't live in a house. I lived in refurbished car garage.
Oh, okay.
This became a Bali's garage in California for a car. Yeah. You got to be kidding me. Waste of space. Yeah. So every place we lived, including here, the garage is not for a car. Right now it holds,
Well, that's true. You don't use your garage for your car.
Yeah.
I never noticed that.
Yeah. So every place was like this. The garage was going to be Virco's. Yeah. And I lived in that new garage with my grandmother. She had the room which was originally built for a workshop within the garage. So she was in there and I was in the other room. When I came back home from school, they said, wait a minute, don't go into the garage yet. Just wait, eat something, do that. How was school, blah, blah. And I was always boring. And so then they said, go take a look. So I went there and there is this, it's a small grand Steinway. Father bought it for $1,000.
It's pretty good.
It's the same piano I still have.
Oh, okay.
The piano.
Wow.
To do with.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It probably is worth now $10,000, $12,000.
Yeah.
So pianos don't really lose. Well, maybe now with those atrocious prices, but in the old days, you bought a piano and that was a security blanket.
Yeah.
In 10 years, you could sell it and get double the money you spent. So
yeah, my mom has a baby grand from her mother. It's been in the family a long time.
Yeah. So
really nice piano.
Yeah. And so when I was married to Lisa, she had a piano. And then lo and behold, our house had a garage.
Of course.
Not for a car.
No.
For 2 pianos and
of
a
course.
music library, etc.
Oh, wow.
I can't stand the idea for a car being placed in the garage. It's a waste of space.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So of course, here Tricia would be saying, well, we can have some shade. Get some trees, bushes, you'll have shade.
Right. I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and that's what we're working on right now. So anyway, at that point, I got a new teacher. I don't remember his first name. His last name was DiMaggio.
Okay.
And he was a conductor, and his sideline was composing. He wrote a new Ave Maria and all of this. And he worked for in America, the Monte Carlo Opera Company, which was a touring company. He was a conductor.
Hmm.
So I came to study piano with him, which I did for a year. And it was easy because he lived like 5 houses away from where, at that point in time, we were living, which was on the way to Elysian Park. Yeah, Elysian Park. And just a good run to Chinatown. So,
Hmm.
wonderful area, lots of
Yeah.
trees. And so I started studying with him. And he wanted me to come on Saturdays, which I would come there about 10 o'clock. We would have a lesson. Yeah, a lesson.
Hmm.
Mainly reading lesson, uh, scales, things like that. And then at 10:30 or 11, the Metropolitan Opera would come on. And we sat and listened together. And he had a scores to everything.
Yeah.
And then I fell in love with music. I didn't care for piano music all that much. But opera, woo, yes, sir. Uh,
It's interesting.
yeah, and those
I
gorgeous
didn't know that.
sopranos. And then, of
Yeah.
course, I saw them, and all of them like built like cannons. Uh, but then he would give me a score to read through for the next opera next week. Opera was every Saturday morning broadcast.
Hmm.
I love Saturday because in the evening, KAFC broadcasts an opera from 8 to 10 p.m.
Okay.
And just to show you how much, I wanted it. So I had two operas on Saturday, right?
Hmm.
Morning live, recorded at night. Well, Saturday night, we would get invited. The Ukrainian community was very generous with that. And the sister of my mother, Olga, uh, but loved to prepare banquets, So she would always have
Right.
10 or 12. And there would be some young guys because my sister-in-law, which you would call, I don't know, Natalia was really quite beautiful. So there were a lot of hound dogs there trying to, get into her pants, I'm sure. And
Right.
so I would say, I got opera at 8 o'clock. What do you mean opera? I listened to opera and I would listen to theater also. Plays would be done on radio plays. Oh, those were really great years in many ways. And they said, well, okay, I'll go with you. We got to meet at 7, but at 8 o'clock, I'm going to the bedroom, plugging in the radio, going to bring me, and until 10 o'clock, I'm listening to the opera. And nobody's allowed to kind of interrupt.
Right.
Well, when you're 13 years old, 14 years old, you start making commands, look at you like this.
Hmm.
But my parents were very good that way. They said, no, this is what he does. And we have to honor that. And Natalia was very much music addicted herself. So she said, oh, yes. She would come in periodically, sit and listen. And then her mother would say, Natalia, get back here. And that was the way it was.
Yeah. Okay.
And at that point, they said, you have to go to the Los Angeles Conservatory. And there's a guy called Earl Voorhees
Hmm.
and see if he can take you. And the reason we did that, because I was scheduled to play the Mozart Turkish March
Right.
on a concert with the Yukis. There was always music among politics and all that. It was a mishmash. And, I wasn't feeling secure because I never had anybody instruct me on it. So
Hmm.
I went and met Voorhees, and he gave me a very good lesson, very detailed, and said, see you next week. When I come back next week, he was very surprised that I was able to, that we could get a lot of what he told me taken care of. So he kind of mumbled to my mother, I think it's going to be an interesting student to have. So, yeah, I'm happy to accept him. So I had to come to LA Conservatory for the lessons. And until I got old enough, I got a car, then I would go to South Pasadena, do lessons at his home. So I played the Turkish parts and everybody was very pleased. Oh, Virgo has improved so much. But anyway, so that's when I was 14, and basically I think that's the point in which some worm got into my mind and said, maybe you should think about doing this for the rest of your life. And I said, the rest of my life, that's too long. Just think.
Yeah.
And by the time I was 16, it was a done deal. And so I started putting him in competitions. I mean, he was really very, very good in many
Yeah.
ways. For instance, when there were competitions and he had a couple of students in, he would tell his students that he thought had some professional possibilities to come to the competition and sit in the hall and take notes. And one of his questions that he always asked was, how did you like the piano? We sort of all looked at him and said, well, sometimes it sounded good and sometimes it sounded terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So he looked at us and said, it's the same piano. I would have said the same fucking piano, but
Yeah.
different story. So so the piano itself is not the problem. The problem is the player. And one of the things you have to learn is you play the piano, but
Mm-hmm.
the piano tells you how to do it. It was extremely important.
Yeah.
It was one of my said, and I would, when we came to Las Vegas, we started the chamber music series with Ken Hamlin. And I had a pianist come in, and he was fairly well known. I forgot his name, Fielding, I think, something like that. And he came in and he did a lovely program, but he started bragging about his Dusseldorfer. Dusseldorfer
Oh, Ludendorff. Yeah.
Was becoming sort of the delay of the year. And
Mm-hmm.
so he would say, oh, I can do this and this on the Dusseldorfer. And I travel and I can't do that. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, I wasn't going to argue with him because, he's a guest. But I said, no, you're wrong. Any piano can sound like a Dusseldorfer at that moment if you know how to make love to it. In other words,
I didn't realize that for a long time until I started listening to many different pianists play. And yeah, the way that they touch the piano, there's a tone that goes with that.
yeah, right. So
Yeah.
that's
I'm
it.
gonna walk him.
Okay, fine.
Hi, Gavin.
I
So
You're from the dentist.
oh, nice. Very, very
no,
white.
No
most-
cavities.
yeah, most people go to the dentist to get their teeth cleaned.
Yeah.
She goes to the dentist to get them sharpened.
Oh no. You'll
Oh,
pay for that later.
well, yes and no.
Yeah. Right.
So we call that our what is it, our stage show or something like that. So
Yeah.
anyway, the progress we made, I started winning competitions and all that kind of stuff. And then I entered into the conservatory, but I took a semester off just to work. Meaning, after I graduated high school, I didn't sign up right away. I spent the fall, working and doing all that. Now, the high school I was at had a very good band program, wonderful band director, and I think a very good composer, Frank Campo,
Mhm. Yeah.
who's essentially neoclassicist type, and I played a number of his pieces, and I stayed in touch with him for a while and then didn't. And this is what happens
Yeah.
when you move. But I've been thinking a lot about him lately and how grateful I was. He taught me theory.
Okay.
And so when I went to the conservatory, they said, we're going to have to take theory because can I do it by examination? They said, sure. So I passed and I didn't have to take
Oh, great.
the undergraduate theory. I had to take
Mhm.
graduate theory later, but not the undergraduate. So I have to take that to Frank. So, and so my life was going very well. And then in 1970, no, 19, I'm getting all mixed up in my head. 1980, no, it was 2000.
Okay.
I went to the Austin Summer Music Festival.
Mhm.
No, Aspen, sorry. Aspen.
Aspen. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, at Summer. Prior to this, I already had some lessons with Rosina Levine. She would come to California. Different schools would give her 6 weeks. And for 2 years, I went to see her. And she was sort of the famous teacher in those times, the Russian school.
Mhm.
And there was Leonard Schur, who was a German school. And they vied with each other. And the students fought with each other over to who was a better teacher. I think they both were very good. I had a lesson
Yeah.
with him, but it was very German and relied much more on structure and all sorts of other things, and wasn't as demanding on tone quality and all of that, which
Mhm.
Levine was. And Levine had a system. When you came to study with her, she gave you basic things you had to do: scales, octaves and thirds, opposite notes, octaves, etc., etc. And if you
Yeah, that's
couldn't
what you made me do.
yeah, and if you couldn't play it at a certain tempo, she called one of her assistants and said, get their technique up. And it was really a regime. And you had to get it pretty fast. I would say 144.
Yeah.
And arpeggios, doing octave arpeggios and all of that. And uh, and so they said, why do you do this? Because she would always say dawdling. And because dawdling, if you know those, 50% of all the repertoire,
Right.
And I think that was, to some extent, was true. So that's how it started. And my point that I reach of where I began to really see myself as potentially being a real professional is about I would say 1998, 99, 2000.
Okay.
Took
That's about when I started taking lessons from you. I started in 96.
No, I'm sorry.
96 through 2003.
No. That's
Yeah.
I was already here. This was before that. It was
Right.
88. No, 70, 68, 58.
That makes sense. One of the eights.
I'm really confused.
No,
But it was
I was gonna say that took you a long time to decide you're going to be a professional if I was already taking lessons from you.
that
Yeah.
was it was without a doubt in my mind in the end of 1960s.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing that I started writing in about the mid 1950s,
Okay.
and tried seriously to write. Some of them were impossible to do because I didn't know enough,
Hmm.
and so I had to learn about writing, and I did it not so much in class. The classes that I taught me, but I would say I worked with a guy called Ruber, and fine composer, again, basically neoclassical. And he wrote one stereo piece that was very tonal. And that's the ambition in one of those. Serialism can be anything you want it to be.
Right.
And you want to be tonal, then it can be tonal. It's a question of how you organize the notes and how you do respect the leaning of the notes. So it's Boris Ruger, yeah. So that was the thing that
Hmm.
when we reached actually 1960s, I was my master's program at the conservatory, which I finished. And I finished my undergraduate work with a magnum summa or something like that. Cum laude, magna cum laude, and then so yes, I got magna cum laude, and so started my master's program. And when I finished with that, then I thought of getting a doctorate. So I went to UCLA, and they said, "Well, you're going to have to go and take some academics that the masters of music don't demand."
Hmm.
But going towards, a PhD, the DMAs were just being discussed. You have to have that first. So I started going taking different classes all over the place. Some in Santa Monica, some in Los Angeles State College, and so on and so on. And then, of course, the Army was waiting. Now, if I stayed for my doctorate, they would get extension, until finally they would kick me out and say, "You're too old, we don't need you anymore." But
Yeah.
I decided I didn't want to get doctorates because I knew already it was going to be, for me, it was going to be Ukrainian music. And there was hardly anybody. I joked, I said, "Who's going to examine me? Who
True.
knows enough to examine me?"
Yeah.
It was Russian, it's different. Ukrainian,
Hmm.
somebody once said, Ukraine, the Texas of Russia. Um, the So I said, "No, I'm gonna do that other way." My father said, "What about getting the degree?" "I'm gonna do it another way. I will be very accomplished," which sort of shows the arrogant part, "and they'll want me because I'm accomplished."
Hmm.
So that was that. And then the next chapter, to be continued.
Yes. It's a
Okay.
very fascinating and lively story there.
See what you
So
can do with it.
what's that?
See what you can do with it.